Welcome back to Max and Stacy Report. I'm Max Kaiser. Time now to turn to Congressman William Soriano, who represents La Union, the area around the future Bitcoin city. Congressman, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Max, for having me again in your show. I'm glad to be here.
Of course you're glad to be here. This is the best show in El Salvador. It has guests like you on. And I wanted to talk to you September 15th, Independence Day in El Salvador. President Bukele gave a speech. And in the speech, he said, yes, I'm running for 2024. But before we get to that, when the phrase Independence Day and true Independence Day is mentioned, tell us what that means to you.
All right, so in theory, our country's been an independent country for more than 201 years. But that's not true. We've not been independent from corrupt politicians, gang members who actually run this country and had it on its knees, and also corrupt political parties and all those powerful elites that have been running this country for decades. We've not been independent at all. Now that we've been actually prosecuting gang members as the Constitution allows us, and we've been changing our country, El Salvador is feeling for the first time that it's free and independent.
Right, there's the Civil War, and then that rolled into the gang war. So correct me if I have understanding this correctly. The Civil War ended up people fleeing El Salvador, and they went to the United States.
30% of our population, actually.
30% goes to mostly the U.S. They end up in prisons in the U.S., mostly in California. In that prison system, they become, as is the case so often, they become hardened criminals by being in that prison system. And that brings us up to the Clinton administration. What did President Clinton do?
Well, they sent us back thousands of criminals, that they were not criminals back when they went from El Salvador to the United States. But when they reached the ghettos of LA, they had to defend themselves, right? And they had adopted certain conducts, and they became criminals. So they were sent back to El Salvador, but Salvadoran authorities didn't know they were criminals. So they were just sending thousands of gang members without us knowing that they were criminals. And that's how they came back to El Salvador, and they began recruiting members, kids, teenagers, and that's how that problem started at all. It all came back with a decision of a president from another country that affected the future and more than 30 years of our country's future. Now, we've put in jail more than 50,000 gang members in the past 5 months. And that's been a very, very important decision for El Salvador we're building right now. Crime rates. Right now, El Salvador is the safest country in Latin America. Only in the 10 years of the previous governments, the past 2 governments, right? They died more than 46,000 Salvadorans. 32,000 were disappeared due to violence. Right now, that's none of it. There's none of it. El Salvador is changing quickly, but because we have a president that's been actually taking real decisions, not the ones other governments are telling him to do, but the actual needs of its people are the ones that are driving his decisions. And taking the best decisions, well, it's for the brave ones.
Right. This brings up a couple of points. First of all, historically, there have been times, I remember in the 1970s in New York City, there was new police policies that came in. There was something called no broken windows, where no crime was tolerated whatsoever. Those who were breaking the law were rounded up and put into prison. The city of New York City that was bankrupt in the 1970s, they became one of the most prosperous, crime-free cities in the world.
Exactly.
Because it was decided that this was something that had to be done. The second point is those in the international community, of course, under the heading of human rights, they will have something to say about this. It seems as though, however, that there's 2 sides to the human rights question. The human rights of 7 million Salvadorans seem to get lost by these international organizations. Exactly. Can you speak on that a little bit?
All right, so I've seen a lot of of NGOs talking about human rights, but human rights of the criminals. What about the victims? What about the 100% of Salvadorans that lived in this country and the rest of the people that flee the country due to gun violence? Who's actually speaking for them? Are they doing it? No. They will never do it because they don't get paid for that. And they will for sure condemn our decisions, but are they giving us any solution at all?
Can you explain something to me? When people use the word like authoritarian or dictator to describe a leader, if a poll were conducted amongst the population, most of the respondents would be against that leader.
Exactly.
Here in El Salvador, these words are used also, but over 90, I think almost even 95% of the population, when polled, have given an overwhelming positive reaction. That doesn't seem to make sense to me. What am I missing?
Well, the thing is that most of the packed media you get outside are trying to sell the idea that El Salvador's president is authoritarian, that is a dictator, right? But when you actually poll Salvadorans here and the ones living in the United States, his numbers are just crazy. I think, would you name me one president that has, on his third year of the presidency, more than 95% of approval?
No, it's
What's the approval of Joe Biden? Or what about the Mexican president?
yeah, Joe Biden is, I think, under 35%. I think he might even be under 30%. But clearly, there seems to be an agenda by these NGOs.
You know why? Because El Salvador is setting an example to the other governments of the whole region that if they take their own decisions without listening foreign governments' indications or whatever they do, things can work. And that's not good for some of them, right?
Right. It would establish a precedent that would challenge the status quo, and
Yes.
that could be a problem if you're in the international banking business or
Exactly.
the international prison business or the international defense contract business. Let's talk about September 15th. So,
What a beautiful day.
yeah?
Yes.
Did you know the announcement was going to be made?
Well, I didn't know that.
What was your reaction when he
right.
said the words?
So it all began in the morning. I went to the parade and I could feel a different energy. Salvadorans, for the first time in decades, were able to go to the streets and feel safe and feel more patriotic than ever. You could feel it. The atmosphere was impressive. People coming from the United States, from other countries to celebrate the pride of being Salvadorans, but not only the pride of independence, but the fact that our country is changing for real. And you could feel it. At the afternoon, I had to go to the presidential house. Let's call it the White House of El Salvador, right? And I knew our president was going to deliver a message to the country and also to the international community, right? But he was giving a speech that started from our independence back in the 18,000s, right? And he explained it, all the processes our country had been going through to this very young moment. At the moment he actually announced that he was running for president in 2024, the whole room just burst in joy. Everyone was in shock, but at the same time, happy. Because our people, Salvadorans, more than 95% of Salvadorans, have been actually asking him to run again. And that's the support that actually has to matter to us. And I think our president has been doing a very good job. You see, El Salvador, that was in the top of the most violent countries, it was the number one. Right now, it's the safest country in the region. That's not something easy to do. That's not something you do from one day to another. But it's taken us 5 months to actually defeat the gangs and to free our country. And from now on, we're truly independent. And when people see the changes our president is doing, the way he handled the COVID and the pandemic, the economic impact it caused, and all the decisions until we land on the security issue and the way he solved it, they wanted to keep up. They want him to keep on going and making the same decisions he's doing. And it's just a matter of logic. If something's working, why would you change it?
You know, I don't want to sound glib, but I am American, and one of the things I thought of was Tom Brady. He's an old guy, 45 years old, but give Tom the ball because Tom can score touchdowns.
Yeah,
right?
MVP, yeah.
Now, President Bukele is on a roll.
Exactly.
He's doing great things. He's a phenomenon.
Yes.
He's got 95% support. He's transforming the country, transforming the region. Let him go. Let him do what he can do. Well, why not? Why would you not want this once in a 500-year phenomenon to see where he can take this country? Everything he's been doing so far has been for the people. Of course, the biggest thing where I caught my attention was making Bitcoin legal tender, which is essentially the complete opposite of what a dictator would do, because it gives everybody in the country their individual sovereignty. So they're mutually exclusive. You cannot be a dictator and make Bitcoin legal. That's a completely ridiculously that notion. So these are themes that he mentioned in the speech: peace, liberty, sovereignty, independence. These are some of the themes. So do you think that essentially talking about economic liberty, the true independence, and going forward from this point forward, what are some of the 2 or 3 ways that you think life will change here?
All right, so making Bitcoin a legal tender in El Salvador was part of the whole strategy. But first, in order to actually make it a whole success, you need to secure the country. You need to make it safer, not only for Salvadorans living here, but also for investors. And we've achieved it.
Okay, what are we seeing on the investor front? What's happening?
All right, so once we achieve security, now you can call investors and you can show them your country and tell them it's safe for you to invest here. It's a good time to actually invest your money into our country. Plus, you have another option, Bitcoiners, who can actually transform specific areas in the country. Bitcoin City, where it is going to be made in the state I represent. And I know it's going to change a lot of lives, not only for Salvadorans, but also for the whole region, because it's Honduras and Nicaragua at the same place. So I think big things are coming to El Salvador. And Salvadorans have learned that if they choose a wise, a brave, but also an honest president, our country is going to change, and it's changing. For how many years Angela Merkel was president or prime minister of Germany?
Oh, it was over 20, I believe.
Did anyone say something about it?
She kept getting the support of the people, and I believe she was reelected accordingly.
Was she condemned by the United States?
The FDR in our country, he was elected, I think, 4 times.
Was she condemned by the IMF? No. Did they say anything about it? No. So why the first world countries can choose and make their own paths?
Right. Well, you're touching on this idea of the run in 2024. This would seem to go up against looking at the Constitution and understanding what are the provisions for this.
Well, the Constitution and the Supreme Court has already established that he can run for another term. So who's the one who interprets the Constitution? The Supreme Court. Now, the Supreme Court has ruled that he can actually run for another term. Well, there's nothing else to do.
Right. So to your point, and I think what people are focusing on is that, and this point was made during the speech, dozens and dozens of countries allow for 2 terms in office. The one term,
I can name you some of them.
Right. Well, the one-term rule, from my understanding of history, was really imposed by outsiders to make it easier to control a country
Exactly.
like El Salvador.
Exactly.
And so in the current historical inflection point, El Salvador would like to break free and be independent and sovereign. And to do that, the amount of work that needs to be done is going to take more than a few years. And we've got a guy in the president's office who's doing a great job. So why wouldn't the people of
Yeah.
El Salvador have the same benefit as the people of the United States or countries around the world, where if you like what the guy's doing, you can elect him again? I mean, it
Yeah.
seems pretty simple.
Exactly, and the numbers and the polls are saying that he's the best option for our country.
Right, and I think this idea of self-sovereignty for the people is being pushed very hard by the leadership in this country. So any fears that people have on the outside that are mitigated by the fact, again, but that Bitcoin is legal tender. That's how I see it. But what do you? I mean, the momentum is so fantastic, and the kind of I know you're on the road now speaking more and more to the diaspora in the United
Yeah.
States. What's been the response? I saw you in Los Angeles.
It's impressive.
And I thought it was the second coming of Cary Grant or some major movie star or something. I mean, they were lining up. You were like
Yes.
the Brad Pitt of El Salvador. What's happening? What was that what's true, or was that all
Well,
what's happening?
They make you feel like you're in El Salvador, but in another country. It's just impressive, the amount of energy and the fact that people want to be part of the changes that our country is actually living. It's just amazing. It moves you. It gives you the security that you're going through the right path. I've been traveling to LA, to Washington, Virginia, Houston, Miami, and many other states. And every time I get there, there's thousands of Salvadorans waiting for us. First, so they can hear the great news we're doing, of the work we're doing here, but also they want to be part of it.
Right.
You can hear stories from people that haven't lived in El Salvador for more than 40 years because they felt unsafe. And they want to come back now, and they want to invest their savings here.
You know, when we're having the experience is that this happened twice. People have come to us and said they're moving back to El Salvador
Yeah.
from the United States, and they're starting businesses. And one is into an ice business, a craft ice
Oh, yeah.
business, right? Who's doing very, very well. And I said, well, okay, El Salvador is doing great. You wanted to move back. He said, that's part of it. The other part of it is that you two gringos, Max and Stacy, are having so much fun in my country. I got jealous.
Well, that's true. I mean, they've seen your example, they've seen your stories, your videos, the life you're living here. That has been just amazing. And it makes everyone jealous, actually.
Yeah, they're like, oh, wait, I'm Salvadoran. Why am I stuck in Detroit?
Yes,
I
I know.
could be in San Salvador.
And food in El Salvador is great. People in El Salvador is great. Weather in El Salvador is great. The
Yeah.
beach, the mountain, the volcanoes, coffee.
When does the rainy
everything is
season
good here.
end? Because quite frankly, I'm getting tired of it.
Well, it's done.
What?
It's done.
It's done?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll
So
take your word
You're
for
getting
it.
much sun right now.
Because I got to go back to El Zante working my surfing.
Go ahead.
Stacy was up the first time surfing, natural.
Wow.
It took me, like I was unable to get up.
Is she good?
Well, she got up and she could do it. I was unable to do it at all. So
Well,
I have to.
You know, surfing in El Salvador, we have a few of the very few spots worldwide that have a very specific type of waves. And that makes us a unique destination for surfing. And we've been having world championships here and world renowned tournaments. And it's just, El Salvador is changing the image the foreign media has been portraying of us for decades.
Yeah, tourism is up like 80%.
And there's a lot to do with Bitcoin.
Right.
There's a lot of Bitcoiners that will never come to this country without having the capacity of actually paying with Bitcoins in anywhere in El Salvador. And that's part of the strategy to change El Salvador's image worldwide. And it's working.
In the assembly where you work,
Yeah.
anyone who watches political TV will see you working in the assembly, working hard. What is the chatter in the assembly about Bitcoin? In other words, you're a Bitcoiner, you're in the assembly. So is it What's it like there? People talking about it. Can you give us
Well,
some?
I know some
insight?
colleagues, myself as well. We have Bitcoin, right? We stack them, we hold them. But most of them, they tell you stories about people that will never been able to actually receive payments peer to peer. It would only be cash. And they will lose many opportunities to actually get clients. But right now, most of them who are actually able to receive payments on their wallet, they are having more clients, clients that would never had before. And that's very important for local economies, that they become part of the world economy.
And regional, right? So Central
Exactly.
American, Honduras, Guatemala, all these
Yes.
countries, a lot more inter-regional trade as well with Bitcoin.
It's changing. You see a lot of Guatemalans coming to El Salvador to see what's going on with Bitcoin. People from Honduras, from Colombia as well. They want to know what's happening here. I've been giving some speeches to other congresses, and specifically for whole Central America. Also, I've been giving speeches in Germany, Colombia, the United States. People want to know about El Salvador's experience with the Bitcoin, and I believe that we're just building something that's never been seen in the world. We're just giving them something that's gonna help other countries in developing to actually mark their own path. That's what we're trying to do. El Salvador is just giving them options to become better.
I don't understand why these other countries feel the need to interfere.
Well, you know why? Because they have interests, and they don't want to lose their influence on the decisions we take.
But if they take away the ability to interfere with your money, for example, the U.S. sanctions other countries by sanctioning the SWIFT system or by
Yeah.
seizing money. If you take away that tool because
Use
everyone has
blockchain.
Bitcoin, how are they going to influence you?
Yeah, we use blockchain, so there's no way that it can influence us.
So you're immune from this outside
Well,
interference.
we're just sovereign.
You're sovereign,
Yeah,
sovereign and happy.
yes,
And
and
everyone else,
independent.
come on down for the surfing the papooses.
Yeah, I mean, just as other countries are, they're independent and sovereign, but we were just independent. Right now, we're sovereign, free, and independent, and happy.
Well, I'm feeling it. I live here. I moved here. I feel sovereign and free and happy too, and I'm going to learn to surf. Mark my words. William Soriano, thanks so much for being on Max and Stacy Report.
Thank you, Max, Stacy, for having me here. It's just always great to see you guys. Now that you live here in El Salvador, it just makes me feel way better that you're actually living El Salvador the way it should be lived.
Right on. All right. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of Max and Stacy Report. And coming to you from El Salvador, land of the free, home of the Bitcoin.
Yes.
Want to thank our special guest, William Soriano. Until next time, bye, y'all.